The outcome number one is you identify every problem, every pain, every potential disqualifier. You understand exactly where they are and what's next, and you move them forward in the process with you. Forward always.
I'm Sylvie Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 125 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvie Garibaldi. Today's episode is really a masterclass in modern sales and business development for lawyers, mediators, and divorce professionals who are really focused on growing their practice without feeling pushy, salesy, or too transactional. And so in today's episode, I'm joined by our guest, Steve Fretzin, who is a 5-time best-selling author, host of the Be That Lawyer and Future Rainmakers podcasts, and a business development coach who works exclusively with attorneys. Steve has coached thousands of lawyers on how to build authentic, relationship-driven business development systems that actually work. And so in this conversation, I'm really excited as we unpack why most consultation calls fail, how buyer behavior has changed, how to really build trust before that first meeting, and what professionals need to understand about sales today. So let's dive in. Hello, Steve, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited for today's conversation because I think that your work speaks directly to one of the biggest challenges facing lawyers and other trust-based professionals today, and that is, how do you grow a successful practice without feeling salesy, pushy, or transactional, if you will? And I think what makes your perspective so valuable, Steve, is that you have spent decades dedicated specifically to helping lawyers build business development skills, networking that really feels authentic and relationship driven. And for our audience, they should also know that you've coached thousands of lawyers. You've authored multiple books on legal business development and networking, and you built that Be That Lawyer platform. So that's a huge success. And I want to congratulate you for that because that's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I also can personally appreciate your approach that aligns so closely with what this podcast is all about. And that is that business development doesn't come from pressure or hard selling. It always comes from trust and relationships first. So before we dive into all of that, Steve, for our listeners who may not know you or know your work, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you do and how you started in this field, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd love to. Oh, talking about me. Okay, if you insist. I got into sales at a very young age. I found myself selling shoes when I was 16 and getting paid 1% commission on a $35 pair of shoes, back in the 80s, and 5% on accessories. And I found it really interesting that I could bump up my paycheck, not by selling shoes, but by making sure everyone walked out with socks and purses and all the accessories that go along with the shoes. And I got competitive with another salesman in another store. And I never really thought much about sales after that until I graduated from college. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was to become a student of the game of sales and really build a career around it. And so I did that. I moved up the food chain. Eventually, I was in franchising, selling franchises around the world. And ultimately, I met a coach who I thought could help me out a great deal. And he charged me a significant amount of money. I was very nervous about it. And in fact, I even at the time asked my fiance, I was like, would you talk to him? I want to make sure this is the right decision. And so she did. And when I hired him, and within 6 months, I had made more money than I had in my best year in 12 months. And I eventually just was like, holy mackerel, this is eye-opening, because I always thought I was really good at this thing. And then I asked him, how do I do what you do? He says, well, you know, that money you paid me? I go, yeah. He goes, well, you're going to give me a lot more and then I'll teach you. I was like, okay, great. So I did that and I ended up starting my own business in 2004, really focusing on entrepreneurs. So consultants and financial planners and small companies. And I did some work for some bigger, divisions of bigger companies. Never thought twice about attorneys. My father had practiced for 40 years and he never needed any work. So that obviously attorneys are fine. Well, 2008 comes around and I start getting referred a ton of lawyers and law firms. And within, I think about 16 months, about 80% of my business was lawyers and law firms. I just couldn't believe it, all in the city of Chicago. And the two things that I think really made this happen, number one is that lawyers, as you know, don't learn anything about business development and growing a law practice in law school, let alone at a law firm level. In fact, they go the opposite. Don't do business development, crank out work. And then what you had brought up earlier, I always kind of felt bad about selling and pitching and convincing. And so I knew that if I was going to start my own gig, I needed to have something that felt right and something that I knew would work and work well with professional services. And that's in the form of sales-free selling, which is the title of my first book. And what lawyers loved about it is that no lawyer that I've ever met says to me, I became a lawyer so that I can go out and sell legal services. It hasn't happened in, over 18 years. So what do lawyers want? Well, they want to provide solutions. Well, what is sales? If you do it right with trust and relationship and learning and listening, and you recognize there's problems and you're the person who can solve them. So it is about solutions. It's not so much about selling. And so lawyers absolutely loved it. And so then this has evolved with COVID and everything into an international kind of worldwide business of coaching and training, Rainmaker roundtables. And I also run a community, an online community for ambitious business development oriented attorneys. So it's been sort of a blessing that I was able to not only get into this incredible field, and also that before my father passed a few years ago, that we had a ton to talk about, and not just about where we're going for dinner. He'd want to know everything about my business and how I was helping attorneys and who I was working with at the time and did I have any good stories. So it really gave my father and I a lot to bond before he passed a few years ago. By the way, he's
that's awesome.
Episode number 200 on Be That Lawyer podcast is my dad. I interviewed him at 87 years old. And here's someone who never thought if for a minute he was doing business development. Sure enough, in that 30-minute segment, I pull out he was doing a lot of business development. He just didn't know he was doing it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So I have to agree, because one of the key things that we talk a lot about is, and what I think a lot of lawyers don't fully appreciate, but as they start building their practice, it becomes evidently clear to them that without clients, you don't have a business, right? So it becomes a key factor in building a successful practice. So what better place to start than to unpack that dirty word called selling? Because I think a lot of professionals are uncomfortable with that. So you've mentioned sales-free selling. And so let's break that down a little bit and tell me more about what that actually means. And why do you think so many professionals immediately resist that word in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, there's a profession that's incredibly noble and you have to go to school and you have to pass a bar and you have to jump through all these hoops. So you really, as a lawyer, are on a pedestal because you represent what's best in the world from a standpoint of how we follow rules, right? How do we stay within the boundaries of a society that works? Although if you look at the political scene today, I don't know how well that's doing, but from a standpoint of the noble profession of law, and then you think about sales, the sleazy salesman, the Glengarry Glen Ross coffees for closers. It's icky, it's dirty. And by the way, everyone has walked into a salesperson that tried to sell them a car, furniture, a bathroom, whatever it is, and it never feels right. So when you think about a lawyer doing sales, it's going to have a negative connotation. There's really no kind of way around it unless they've studied it or unless they've really sort of gained some kind of understanding around what sales really is or seen it done properly. Then maybe they have a mindset that's a little more open. But traditionally, there's tons of lawyer jokes and there's things that are negative about the sleazy lawyer at the hospital trying to get cases, like in the Rainmaker, the John Grisham thing with Danny DeVito. He's in the hospital just to get pressure people into giving them the business. So everybody's got negative connotations. It's a matter of how do we start to see through all the negativity into something that really allows us to align with, and you mentioned this, serving others. That's what lawyering is all about. That's what sales is all about when done properly.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to lead with the answer here, but what has changed, do you think, in buyer behavior in the last little while that professionals really need to understand about selling today, especially now that people are researching online significantly before they ever book that first consultation
Yeah.
call?
There's been a massive shift in a number of things, but primarily information, right? So
Mhm.
think about when you were younger and you went and you spoke to a financial advisor, or you spoke to a car dealer, or you spoke to anybody. How much does a trip cost to Italy? Like, who knows? We were just told what it was, and we either believed them or we didn't, or we negotiated or we
Yeah.
didn't. And that was kind of all we could do. And now, I mean, not only do we have the internet, but holy mackerel, we've got now, I saw Expedia is now partnering with ChatGPT and helping people like figure out trips and best prices. And they can look at all the entire, pricing of everything and figure out the best way to go. So information is what started to really turn the corner and allow buyers who never had control to now have really all the control. So you think
Mhm.
about a lawyer who meets with a potential buyer about a legal issue. They spend an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours with them. The person says, "This is great. Send me a proposal." You do that. They meet with you again. They have more questions. They meet with you again to maybe close it up or maybe not. So now you've got 5, 6, 8 hours invested in someone, and they may just take your ideas and do whatever they want with them. They may not even use you. So all this
Right.
running around and jumping through hoops that we now have to do in the traditional model of sales, where we give up all of our secrets and we tell them what to do and we give them our rates and basically lead them to not having to need us. So the seller is selling, the buyer is buying, the buyer's kind of in control. And then what happens is the seller's jumping through hoops. And what I'm talking about in teaching with sales free selling is both of the models are broken. They're a competitive model. Everyone's out for themselves. And how does that build trust? And how does that build a relationship and longevity in starting off on the right foot with someone? It doesn't in many cases. So what I'm suggesting with sales free selling is we need to remove the pitching, convincing, selling, talking, and we can't also allow the buyer to get everything out of us up front. It doesn't mean that we're not going to give them information, but there's a process I'm hoping I can share with you that will kind of explain that there's a variety of steps we need to take that ultimately get us to a presentation. But there's a number of steps that are going to happen that are going to allow us to know what to present, when to present, how to present, or if we even should present. Right?
Right.
Some
Right.
people, if you find out in 15 minutes that someone doesn't have any money at all and the project's 100,000, well, why are you going to chase after them for the next 6 months? So there's a lot to unpack with this, but ultimately
Mhm.
it's about finding the perfect fit and finding a way to walk a buyer through a buying decision versus trying to sell, pitch, and close a buyer.
Right. Makes total sense. So let's unpack that a little bit further. And so moving into the first stage, which is basically building trust before the very first call or before they reach out. And I think that is probably one of the most overlooked areas of business development, is that the sales process often starts way before that first call. So as we unpack this, what are the biggest trust builders that happen before someone books a consultation? Or what are you recommending that lawyers do well before that first call, if you will?
Well, this is one that might get some eye rolls, except you're not going to roll out your eyes. You're going to be looking at me like I'm spot on, because it's really, how are you setting yourself up as a thought leader? How are you setting
Mhm.
up your brand? People listen to Be That Lawyer podcast. They call me up to meet with me about their building their book of business. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a celebrity. I'm 100% not. And if I think I am, my teenager will knock me right down. I've got someone that keeps me in check, my wife and my teenager. But the goof of that is, and the reality is, if somebody's been listening to me, reading my books, listening to my podcast, watching my videos, they feel like they really know me, like me, and trust me. They know that I'm 100% authentic and I get great results from my clients, and they're the ones who say it more than I say it. So I'm already pre-sold in many cases, and I don't think lawyers do a very good job with that. So I think number one is, how are you putting your brand out there, and how is that resonating with your audience and your population of the people who may need your services? That's sort of step one, but very often skipped.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. Because the first thing they are doing is they are going online. And what are they reading about you? What are they learning from you? What's your philosophy? All those things should be reflected and curated online, so that when potential prospects are making that first inquiry, they want to be able to know about you, like you said, from your books, from your podcast. And I think in some respects, that makes the selling process a lot easier. It's not going to be 100% slam dunk, of course, but it certainly does help the process significantly. And you're absolutely right. Attorneys are not doing that well enough. And that is definitely a place for improvement for sure. So you would recommend making sure that they have all of those areas curated in terms of understanding what they do, how they do it, case studies, anything else that comes to mind?
I mean, if all else fails and a lawyer's doing really nothing around thought leadership, branding, marketing, putting themselves out there, books, articles, speaking, whatever, have a good LinkedIn profile. I mean, your
Yeah.
people don't realize that they're not going to your website anymore. They're typing in your name. They want to know about you as a lawyer. They look at your LinkedIn profile. And the analogy I would give is that this is your book cover. So I see your book. I see a green banner with nothing on it. I see your name. I don't have a phone number. I don't have an email. I don't know
Yep.
what area of law you practice. I see no recommendations. Your book cover sucks. And I'm
Right.
just going to move on to the next lawyer who has a better book cover versus someone who has all of that laid out in a professional way, had some help doing it. Maybe that's okay. It's not complicated to do. But ultimately, that's where people are going to look to validate that you are real and that you are who you say you are. And that's minimum. But I say if you do nothing else, get your LinkedIn profile in order and understand that that's where people are actually going today.
Right. Yeah. And I absolutely love that because if someone does a Google search, the top inquiries coming back up for you would be your website or your LinkedIn profile or vice versa, right? So it's one or the other, but it's always up there when you've got a completed LinkedIn profile, you are active on LinkedIn, and it is just an incredible place to get what I would call free SEO in a way because of the algorithm, and it works so powerfully. So that's very well said for sure. Do you think that there are any big mistakes that attorneys are making online that you think that they can avoid to reduce that trust so that by the time they get to that first conversation, there will be more information or likely a more fruitful conversation, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is business development is one area that you've got to focus on and building relationships and getting out there. And then while that's happening, I like the marketing branding happening at the same time. For most of my clients, when I help them write a plan, we look at 2 or 3 business development activities.
Yep.
There's conferences are fruitful or leveraging low hanging fruit like existing and past clients and getting referrals from them or more business, cross marketing. And then there's the branding. And I'm like, let's pick a poison. Do you enjoy writing? Do you enjoy speaking? Do you want a podcast? Like, what's your poison? And let's pick one, at least have one thing that's helping us build our reputation online. And the argument we're going to hear is, for example, LinkedIn, it's just so messy and there's so much crap there. And why would I want to be there and just add to the crap? And I go, there is a lot of crap there, but I'll tell you, your job would be to cut through it. Like your job, it's like, oh, there's a lot of bad lawyers. So why should I be a lawyer? Well, that's why you should be a lawyer because there's a lot of bad lawyers. Let's make LinkedIn a better place. And so if you're providing in commercial real estate, really good information that's helpful to brokers, that's helpful to general counsels, that's helpful to landlords and everything, tenants about the do's and don'ts of commercial real estate. And you're giving really good information. You're showing like your authentic self and it's something that they can see through the clutter, then you're there. And then of course, consistency. You can't do that for a couple of weeks and stop or a couple of months and stop. You got to be
Right.
on LinkedIn at least a year, putting out really good content, not I made super lawyer, okay? Not look at this firm retreat we did that I attended. Look at this presentation someone else is doing. That's the stuff that I'm not going to tell people not to do it, but I'm saying from a standpoint of like cutting through and getting to people that could use you for business, then that's not going to do it. I'm a big fan
Right.
of education and authenticity and really showing who you are.
And I think you hit on something really important when you said, be on LinkedIn posting consistently for a year. That shocks professionals when they hear that because it's like, oh, really? It takes that long? And the reality is, I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. It does take much longer than you think to actually build that thought leadership and for people to start noticing. So thank you for being honest about that. I think more professionals need to hear that. So what do you think about as we move into the sales call itself, if you will? So this is where I think a lot of professionals become uncomfortable because they want to avoid obviously sounding salesy or feel like they're overselling something. So as we dive into this, I thought it would be interesting to hear before we actually get into a little bit more of the process of during the sales call. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see professionals make during these consultations or discovery calls?
Yeah. Well, it was mentioned earlier, we're talking way too much and we're not really in control. Whoever's talking feels in control, but that's not necessarily the case. It's who asking the questions is in control. I mean, you're in a courtroom, the person talking isn't the one in control. They're on the stand, right? It's the lawyer asking the questions that's really dictating and controlling what's going on. So I think
Mhm.
talking too much, selling too much, pitching too much, there's the sizzle of the steak. And I've got to get all of this out because there's something I'm going to say that's going to catch them just right and lead to the business, right? And look at how great we are and let's pump our chests and the whole thing. So it's not necessarily the lawyer's fault. I think that for 100 years, this traditional selling model of the pitch meeting has been around and nobody's really just like said, hey, have you ever considered that there might be something better, that there might be something more in line with the way buyers actually want to buy? And
Right.
stop and reflect. Yeah, I think that would be great. And by the way, it also will make you feel salesy and like you're selling yourself. That sounds interesting too. So I think mostly that's the problem. And then, of course, terrible follow up, or I don't want to pressure them. So I'll just let it go for a few weeks and it's gone. And then you're just
Yeah.
chasing on email and you're just spinning your wheels and it's already too late at that point. So they've gone a different direction. It's just, if you don't know something, you can figure it out on your own. You can continue doing it wrong and just over and over year after year, or you could become a student of the game and learn things that actually work. And imagine if you're running a trial and you've never learned how to run a trial, you're not going to do too great. Yet
Right.
in business development, somehow lawyers are expected to just know what to do in these meetings.
Right. And it's interesting because there is this idea that lawyers have to have all the answers and that they have to be the most confident one in the room. And I believe that that actually influences the sales conversation as well, as that notion is that I should have all the answers rather than being more inquisitive and just asking the right questions and listening. And you also mentioned something a bit earlier in this conversation where you said there's a fine line between giving away too much information in the discovery or consultation call. Do you think that's a mistake that some lawyers make? Would that be one of the
100%.
top mistakes?
Yeah, free consulting is top of the list. I
Okay.
know that I had a landscaper come out, didn't ask me a damn question other than, what do you want me to do? I told him what I wanted done. He then
Yeah.
told me how he was going to do it. He sent me a proposal. I looked at the price and it was over. It was over.
Right.
He was twice as much as I was expecting. And I saw
Right.
really no value in him at all. And so,
Right.
but he kind of explained it. Now I can take his pricing and now I can compare it with other landscapers. And that's how I played the buyer game. That's how all of us buyers do it. And we protect ourselves. Now, if he had come in and he had said, all right, what do you want to do here? Tell me about a few experiences with other landscapers. What did you like about what they did? What did you not like? What are you really trying to accomplish here with your landscaping? And what kind of budget do you have? What are you thinking here? Is it something that you want it broken down? You want the full service? Do you want something just mow the lawn and be done? None of that
Right.
happened, right?
Right.
So it's just talking is the enemy of what should be happening in these meetings.
I want to share something with you that I see come up time and time again. Many professionals I speak to know exactly who they want to attract, but where things break down isn't clarity, it's actually implementation. So they're not sure how to translate that into messaging, how to stay visible, or how to turn that visibility into actual client inquiries. So if this sounds familiar, I created a step by step guide to help you work right through this. This free guide walks you through how to define your ideal clients, identify the right referral partners, understand where they're actually looking, including AI, and most importantly, how to turn all of that into consistent action. You can download your free guide at www.sgandassociates.ca/free-guide. Link is also in the show notes. Right. So what do you think attorneys should be doing? Should they ask the questions like you mentioned and then go back to them again and inform them of the process and the cost?
I'm going to give you our mantra. This is the mantra. I have a class I teach every Tuesday morning, and I have 20 lawyers in this room, this Zoom room, and we work on these skills every
Yeah.
single week. And the mantra that we went over today again is prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So what's happening when lawyers are talking and selling and giving up free consulting and giving out proposals, right? they're giving the prescription, but where's the diagnosis? How deep has that diagnosis gone? So I told you before we started that I had rotator cuff surgery. The first doctor I went into, he just took a look at me. He said, "What happened?" I fell on my arm and I hurt my rotator cuff. He goes, "All right." And he got out a saw. And I was like, "What are you doing with that?" He's, "Well, I'm just going to saw your arm off." I was like, "Okay, that's not good. Maybe I need a second opinion." That's prescription without diagnosis. And that's most attorneys, right?
Right.
The doctor I want is, tell me what happened. Let me see your range of motion. Let's look at some x-rays and MRIs. Let's come up with the best possible way for you to get through this pain-free and get full mobility back on your arm. That's the doctor I want. That's not the lawyer most people are getting in these sales meetings.
So is it like multiple conversations then? So the first is gathering information and then they meet with them again. So it's a series of meetings, would you say?
I'm going to give you a lawyerly answer. It depends. So if I'm selling an estate plan, if I'm selling a contract, if there's something that can be done in one 30-minute call, then it's a 30-minute call and it's done.
Yeah.
If it's something that's a $500,000 deal or $1 million and it's changing law firms and there's a lot of moving parts, you got to bring in partners, you got to do all this stuff. There's all this stuff going in. It could be 6 months or a year. So it really depends. But no matter if it's 30 minutes or it's a 6-month project, there's a process I teach called sales-free selling, where you follow a series of steps and 2 outcomes happen. The outcome number 1 is you identify every problem, every pain, every potential disqualifier. You understand exactly where they are and what's next, and you move them forward in the process with you. Forward always. Or you identify the lies, you identify that they're wasting your time, you identify they're unqualified, they have no money, they're working you over, and they're never going to meet with the decision maker. It's just going to be a big chasing game. You can disqualify them and move them to a no incredibly quickly. Now, that's going to be weird for lawyers because, don't take no at any cost. My suggestion is take no as fast as you can get it once you know that it's not really a fit.
Right.
And there's a skill to that. There's a skill and a system to how we work these meetings to make the entire engagement about them, but yet we have all the control. And of course, we're learning everything. We're learning about their problems. We're learning about how deep those problems go. We're learning about their urgency to change. We're learning about if they're the decision maker, their money, everything we need to know so that we can determine what exactly we are presenting, when we're presenting, how we're presenting, or even if we are going to present at all.
Right. And so your goal in a way is to put them in one or two camps, right? So you're going to either continue the conversation or you've disqualified them and end the conversation.
Yeah. And what this does, and this is sort of a dirty little secret that I have, is all these lawyers who are spinning their wheels and spending way too much time on business development, think about how powerful it is for you in a 30-minute or 1-hour meeting to know that someone should stay in your pipeline and keep moving them forward with a specific next steps, no chasing, or disqualify them right away, stay friends, or maybe it's a no for now. They don't have a need right now. It's a year down the road. Keep in touch, put them on a tickler system so you keep in touch with them on LinkedIn or whatever, newsletter, check in, call in 3 months, but know that you're not chasing, following after somebody who's never going to really buy from you, but you're spinning your wheels 5, 10, 15, 20 hours into something that you believe is real, but it's actually not. And you just never really knew the truth.
Yeah. So do you think that could you share like 1 or 2 questions with our listeners that can either really identify that this person is a yes, or if you want questions that you could ask to easily disqualify them?
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about pain points, right? About the problems. So let's say that I'm talking to someone about business development and I identify that they don't have a business development plan or tracking system. Their networking is all over the place. They're not really getting any business from the networking and they're putting in a lot of hours and they're not getting in front of enough decision maker. They need to get in front of 5 to 10 a month to stay in course with growing the book of business. They're barely getting in front of, 2 or 3. Okay.
Right.
So that's what I learned maybe in an email of why they want to meet with me. Right. Or I learned that in the first couple minutes of a meeting. And here's a great question, by the way, if you don't mind me giving away some free consulting. I ask this question and I teach all my lawyers too. So with regards to business development, what are your primary challenges, frustrations, and concerns? Yep. So what that does is it allows somebody to give up 2 or 3 or 4 different things that are irking them or that aren't working. And what it's allowing me to do is create a list of their problems. And the more things on the list, it's like the more ammunition I have to go to work, right? Or the more evidence I have in a courtroom. Because if they have one thing and it doesn't go the right way, then it's over. If they have 4, 5, 6 things and one thing doesn't go the right way, well, I still have 5 backups, right?
Right.
So that's part of it, but that's only the beginning. People think if they hear what someone's problems are, that this is a lock. We're going to get this business. They told me that they have these problems, and I'm taking them to a whole other level. So the lawyers I train, they're learning questioning techniques that, you're telling me that you don't have a plan. That sounds challenging. Tell me about what's been going on and how you've been spending your time without a plan. And then you're telling me about how you're wasting countless hours running around doing a dozen different things we call random acts of marketing. You know that.
Yeah.
And then I can take it deeper and go, so how many hours are doing this? And they say, about 100 hours a year. And what are you charging an hour? Oh, like 750. All right. So right away.
And how many years have you been doing this this way?
Now you're onto it. And what happens if nothing changes? Is that okay? And they're just like going to dig themselves a hole because none of what they're doing is okay. All of it is wasting time and money and opportunity. And you're not closing it anywhere near enough what you should be because you don't have the skills or the process or the systems to do it effectively. So when I get into a meeting like that, it's not about putting someone in a corner. It's getting them to identify, I thought it was a problem. What I didn't realize is that there's a tremendous amount of cost and impact on my life, on my family, on my career, because I'm doing things in a way that aren't productive. And when you're a lawyer and you're meeting with someone about a litigation matter, about an estate plan, anything, the goal is to find out for them to realize themselves that if they don't make a change, it's a real problem. And that happens through effective questioning.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about the follow-up or the after the sales call. What are some of the key mistakes or what are some of the things that you see attorneys make that could really turn things around if they engaged in the steps that you're going to tell us about?
Yeah. So obviously part of the questioning in the sales free selling process is driving up urgency. Driving up urgency to make a decision. If it's something where they can drag it out for a year, then it's probably not the kind of client you want, right? Because they're taking something that should be urgent and they're downplaying it. It's just going to get them into more trouble. But if you can identify that they have compelling reasons to change, then setting up a next step right away. Like, don't let them leave the room or the meeting. Say, look, these are the problems you've told me. This is the urgency. You've shared for me that this is a 10 out of 10 to resolve. Let's set up a next meeting right now to get back together to talk about how we're going to work together or to go over our presentation or proposal together, because there's going to be questions. I'd like to be there when you're looking and reviewing it. We just review it together. So much better than sending something, right? They look at, like with the landscaper, looked at the price, didn't see the value, and it's gone. So imagine a lawyer sending a proposal where they're $1,000 an hour and the most that company's ever paid is $650. They're going to be like, well, let's just not ever call that person back again. They don't get that at $1,000 an hour, they're getting a lawyer that's going to run circles around the $650 an hour lawyer potentially, right? Or maybe staff it more effectively. It could end up costing less. They just can't know that. So I think that's really the first part of it is getting the urgency and then setting up a follow through right there in the moment. Okay. Right. The second one would be establishing that there is a next step and saying, look, I'll email you some dates and times, but we need to get this in the calendar and let's move this forward. Or when do you want me to check in with you? Because it sounds like you're going to need to do X, Y, and Z. It's going to take you a few weeks. How do you want me to follow up with you to get back in front of each other? And they say, well, yeah, I mean, we've been texting. Let's just keep texting. That seems to be the easiest way to communicate. Now they're expecting a text, and the likelihood that they're going to be responsive to that text goes way up because they've just said, I'd like you to text me, right? Versus playing the chasing game. So just a few ideas, but if you don't have a way of following up, you haven't driven urgency, you don't have a way of following up, likelihood is that things are just going to get cold and they're just going to find someone else or just hold off on the matter, which again, ultimately could make it worse. So are you really being the best lawyer you can be? If somebody has significant problems, they should be working with you and they don't. So in a way, if you do sales properly, you're actually doing the buyer a great service because you're going to get them out of a jam that will get worse if they don't take action, and you're helping them take action.
So do you recommend that attorneys, when they book that second meeting, is that when they actually present the proposal? Is that the second meeting rather than sending it to them in advance before the meeting, like as they're breaking down what the costs are and how the process is going to work?
Yeah. So again, if it's one meeting that you're having and you've got a boilerplate and you and I want to work together and I just have to walk you through my retainer agreement. Okay, well then that's all we need to do. I have people meet with me for 30 minutes. I evaluate them, find as much gaps as I can in their game of where they could be doing better with great potential. I then send them to my class to audit the class. So that's step two is if you don't like this class, we're not a fit to work together because I'm not working with anyone in a coaching and training capacity where the training isn't a part of their mindset. I believe very strongly that coaching is important, but if you add a training component, then you really get accelerated growth. Other coaches
Yep.
don't do that. That's fine. And then after that meeting, I'll also offer, do you want to talk with a few of my clients? Because you may want to talk with other lawyers. And then once they've done those two things, if they still want to move forward, we'll schedule a meeting to get back together. I'll walk them through the whole program. By the way, no one knows exactly what I do or how I do it until that third meeting. I never present until that third meeting. It's really all about them, leading them into the class, into talking with clients. They're so excited about working with me after those two experiences, hearing what other lawyers are doing after working with me and coming to that class, seeing 15 to 20 other bright-eyed attorneys that are just like them, solos, big law, multi-million-dollar books, no book, whatever. Everybody's there for the same reason. It's really cool. And then that last meeting is when I walk them through, this is what the program actually is. And I talk to them about what the investment is. And if it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's not, it's not. I'm not losing too many unless, again, they're financially strapped and just working with me doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I love how you shared this process because it sounds like to me that some attorneys do need a more customized sales process, depending on what they're selling and what that ticket price is, right?
There could be a system or an approach that is universal. Just like if I say prescription before diagnosis is malpractice, that's universal in a mantra and is something every lawyer should consider following. But someone who's doing estate planning versus high stakes litigation, there's got to be customization. That's where the one-on-ones come in. That's where we need to take their infomercial, their LinkedIn, their way they're doing sales free selling, the way that they're networking, everything has to be customized to them. But we can still take the guts of what the philosophy is and the system is and utilize it.
Totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of marketers or people buying marketing services and business development services think that they can just take something and use it and it's going to work for them. And sometimes it will. And other times it, I think anyway, has to be customized to where they are in the process, right? Whether they're a beginner, middle, what is their experience? What's their network? What are their key attributes that are better than others? And so there's so many factors that go into that customization. I think a lot of people miss that. They think a cookie cutter business development approach, sales process is all it's going to take because your competitor's doing it, so I should do it too, kind of thing, mentality. And it doesn't always work.
And that's where, AI is going to come in and people can try to ask AI questions to get answers and approaches on business development or practicing the law or whatever. But lawyers and folks like us, Sylvia, it's our experience, it's our ability to help customize, it's our connection with the client and how we work together as partners. AI can't do that. I had a client today, is his last class, and he gave, I should post this on LinkedIn, but he kind of gave a testimonial to all the other classmates, some who have started today, about his experiences in the last 8 months in this class. And anybody hears that, they're going to want to be in this thing because it wasn't just about the results and it wasn't just about the great system. It was the bond that he and I have had as true partners in this thing where he left a firm, went out on his own, scary, really scared, and planning on 6 months to a year of not selling anything. And within a few months, he's already in the black and doing well, and really felt strongly that, this partnership had a lot to do with that. I'm in this for those kinds of moments and wins, and you can't share that kind of stuff with AI.
Yeah. And it's so rewarding when you see that your clients are succeeding. It's one of the good feelings that come out of that when you know you're helping someone
100%.
move to that next level or reach that area of success that they are striving for. So one last quick question for you, and that is ghosting. What is your take on that? So in a sales process, the attorney does the follow-up and the prospect goes silent or doesn't respond. They were, really warm, hot. They were super interested and then
you're taking me
not
full
responding.
circle. Yeah, you're taking me full circle. So
yeah,
why do people ghost? Well, because that's the buyer model. So when we're not using sales free selling, when you've got to sell it, when you've got a traditional selling pitching model and you've got a buyer model that involves getting everything, every ounce of free consulting and rates and information. And then you're calling me and I've already taken that information and compared it to other people, done it internally, pulled off on it. And then what do I want to do? Give you bad news? Like, hey, I appreciate you spending all this time with me. I'm not going to use anything. I'm not going to use you, but I took all your stuff and I'm using it internally with AI and with my current law firm, and we're going to do great things. Thanks for all that free stuff. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to do that or say that, but we're
Yep.
getting ghosted because people have a poor process. They're giving away everything. They're talking about everything. And then they're wondering, where did everybody go? And the reality is, when you don't talk and you ask questions, they have to
Yep.
come back because they don't
Right.
know anything yet. It's all relationship and all belief that you have the answers. And I need to come back to you to get those answers. And you've also kind of figured out who's qualified, who's not. So
Yep.
again, a good system solves for that. However, if you've done a good system and you believe you've gotten it and you're getting ghosted, well, obviously there's the first email checking in. The second one can be a little bit elevated. Maybe you didn't see my first email or something. The one that I love is, and I did this with my now wife and it worked so well. I hate to say that I used a sales technique on her, but I did. But it was a takeaway. I said, Lisa, I don't know that you feel the same way about me I do about you. And so maybe we just call it a day. And if things change down the road, you let me know. And I hung up. I didn't hang up on her, but I kind of hung up. And she just sat there like awestruck that I like took all the cards off of her table. And I basically Seinfeldism, I got the hand back in that moment. But to say to a client, to someone who's ghosting you, I really appreciate you investing the time. It sounds like you may have other things that are taking a priority. I think for now, what I'll do is I'll close the file and tell you how much I appreciated meeting with you. Obviously, if anything changes, let me know. But for now, we'll call it a day. Now, that either takes it to a no and you're over and you don't have to chase anymore. Or they go, whoa, we were just busy. Don't go anywhere. And then they come back and now you have, again, the upper hand to lock up that business. So it could be a really good win-win way to manage. And I'm not giving that as advice in every scenario. I'm giving that advice when like they've ghosted you to the degree where you're like, I don't like these people anymore. Or this is really getting to the point where, it's been 3-4 follow-ups and it's enough is enough. I just need to close this out and move on with my life.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. So I guess as we wrap up this episode, Steve, is there any parting advice you could leave for our listeners or that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Be a student of the game. It doesn't have to be hiring a coach. Books, podcasts, articles, videos. I don't hire a coach for how I smoke meat and I've become really good at using my smoker, but I sure have read a lot about it, watched a lot of videos and talked to a lot of people about how to do it and helped me not become a chef, but it's helped me make some pretty good salmon. My wife's pretty happy. So
yeah, that's awesome. Great. And how can people learn more about you and your services?
Yeah, easiest way is my website, bethatlawyer.com. Also very prolific on LinkedIn. I'm probably posting anywhere from like 2 to 4 times a day, content that I'm creating, things that I think will be helpful. I write for Above the Law, Attorney at Work, and a number of other publications.
We'll also put the links in the show notes as well so people can easily reach out to you there. Steve, thank you so much for helping us reframe selling and making it not sound like such a dirty word. And I know our listeners are going to find this incredibly insightful and are going to walk away from this episode with a lot of great information. So thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure.